Welcome to the Rollin' Homies channel. I'm Mike Carr, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how I installed this custom door latch system on a 1998 MCI Motorcoach. Let's get to it. So I've already torn into the box here, but I thought I'd go ahead and start here. Now, it definitely is very nice packaging. So tearing into the rest of the package, it is wrapped very nicely. You do have to undo these 3 screws here to get the top plate off. Once you do that, it just comes apart. So just first impression of this, it is very robust. It's a very nice door lock. The only thing I really have found difficult just messing with the assembly here, you do have to align these locks on these knobs here. And this latch, you have to make sure that it is in the down position. So if you have it up and you're trying to push it all together, it's going to make things even more difficult. This is truly, it's got a lot of weight. It's definitely a very beefy front door lock. I like this so much, I think I'm going to be putting it on my Eagle bus. But the one thing I am really happy about is this door striker plate. So this is the latch striker plate, and this is something that is on a lot of Class A motorhomes, but you can almost never source these individually. Or you have to buy an entire lock set. But in this scenario, it was perfect because, well, it came with it. Very nice packaging. Here it is. It is the Carmtek. I don't know, I got it off of Amazon. But let's see what we have in here. Very nice little remote. And it's got batteries in it. Hopefully we won't have to program it. I'm guessing that's the second one. You have some more screws for installation. Came with 4 keys, so you get two for the deadbolt lock and then 2 for the door lock. You can select the sound to be high, low, or mute it, and then you have the switch here for syncing your remotes, and of course that's all in the instruction manual. We will get to that. And then your batteries go in here under this cover. So, and they did send a 4-pack of AA batteries. So overall, a very nice kit. Now in this particular setup, I'll be installing the door lock in this area, so it will require me to cut this out. I will also have to cut this area out so that the latch can slide through here. So this will get cleaned out, and then I will have to strap in a secondary piece of metal here. And this is just going to be for added support. Some of the door will need to be cut away so that I can place the door latch behind here. So this will get cut out. I'll have to add an additional support here. That'll keep it from pulling on the actual door cover and potentially pulling away from here. They'll have an additional lock and latch system on their bus door. So no reason to take that out, remove the handle or any of that. We'll just leave all that. We don't have to do a whole bunch of repairs on the door. But it will fit nicely in this area. And the striker plate fits in here nice and flush. It will sit just behind this plate where this gasket is sealed into, and it will clear this piece as well. So it will sit back far enough so that when the door closes, it will just catch the striker plate there. I'm actually going to have to cut the opening out even larger so that that whole lock can set into the door about a 1/2 inch, and it's almost going to be flush. And the reason is because, you know, again, this is 2 inches here, and you can see that's dead center of the door, and that is dead center in the threshold. So if I came out what looks about like a 1/2 inch, that is going to be putting that striker plate right on this edge, and I don't want that. Really want that striker plate to land here, and if I have to, I can cut some of this aluminum away, and that will be a much better plan for installing that striker plate. And then I will have whatever piece of metal I fabricate, I will panel bond it to the inside of the door. So this is my frame that I'm going to be gluing to the inside of the door, and I did get a 2-part 3M epoxy. I don't know, it's hiding somewhere, but this is going to get glued to the inside of the door. This is just going to fit around that almost, you know, pretty nicely. So this will fit to the outside of that piece. So I have to cut this off. I have to get in here and cut this off, and then I have to cut this hole out. And because this is not going to be even, I'm gonna have to first glue another piece on here. So once I get my hole cut out where I want it, I gotta glue a piece on here, wait for that to dry, come back, cut another piece out for the door to fit in here, and then I have to weld a piece onto here to close this in so that the back of that door, the door lock has something to grab onto whenever you go to pull it open. But it also has areas for it to mount on the front of the door here with those little bolts that stick out. But in the end, it's going to be a very, very nice door latch. Well, it should look damn near stock. Anyways, gonna keep going. Basically made a template out of cardboard that this lock would slide onto. So this is basically going to give me an idea of where to cut the hole on my piece that I fabricated. So let's go look at that. Now I've already drilled my holes and everything. So basically I use this to make my contraption. And of course, I don't know if I showed this yet, but this is looking much better than the other piece that I made. So basically what I did is laid this template inside of here, and that gave me an idea of where to cut out. So now we can take this piece. Okay, and you can see that the lock is going to sit right inside there. It fits in there really nice. I mean, I'll be able to square it up once I get it in the actual door. This will all get spray painted black when I'm finished. Now, to put the back plate on, I did just use panel bond. And, you know, if you're not familiar, they glue cars together with that. And once it's dry, it's like steel. So this is going to be what is used. So after I position this inside, that was going to sit in here, I then made some dots there, and you can see I made my little dots, and so I drilled those holes out, and then that basically showed me where this thing was going to sit. This is the picture frame, and this first edge here represents where this metal lands, and then I gave myself about a 1/16 of an inch gap basically for the thickness of this material. And so then that's where I sat this on the outside, and I traced it out. So that would be the basic footprint for where the lock is going to land. And then I can start working on how this is going to finish out. Now, I already know that I have to clean a lot of this up. I did have to cut this piece away, and that was so that I could even have access to get to these spots. So I've got about 3/4 of an inch here that inset. So I have plenty of space for my frame, my picture frame, to set in here. And then I had to cut these away here because I can't remove this. It's glued and welded, and then you can see it's got panel welds on the other side. So I could pry it out on this side here, but then getting it out over there would be very difficult. So I didn't want to mess with that. Kicking away at this thing, and when I come back, I should have a hole there. So this is the hole. I have sanded away the rough edges, and I'll come back with probably some 300 grit sandpaper and just rough this up enough to get a little coat of primer on it whenever I prime the metal piece as well. But I also had to do some other, you can see I had to cut into my nice work, and I'll show you why. And that's because I just couldn't get to, if you can see it, that weld in there. So this whole flange went around, it came down here. And if you remember, it had the hole there. This flange came all the way down into this corner here and was tack welded there, and is still tack welded there. So it was, I mean, I just basically beat it back and forth with a flathead screwdriver and flattened it, and then used the flathead to basically chisel into it, finally cutting it away to a point where I could bend it away. So with the notching out of this, and yes, I'll have to spray paint all that so that it doesn't rust, but you can see it butts up against there very nicely. Here is what we were looking at. Got a nice finished line there. But once I get black paint on this, and you can see here I've got a I'll still have to smooth this out. I'll sand this down a little bit more once I get the panel bond on it so I can round these corners. Now what I'll do is I'll put a piece of wood on this side, and then I will screw another piece of wood to this side so that it clamps and compresses this whole thing while that panel bond is setting up. Now I'm not going to leave the wood clamp on there for whatever the cure time is, because then I'm not going to be able to pull the wood panel off, and I need to be able to pull it off so that I can scrape away all of the excess panel bond that's going to be gooing out of here and here, and I'll probably have to get some acetone and wipe it off as well. But that really is going to look very nice once it's spray painted black and the edges are cleaned up. Look at that, how it finishes in there. So that is very nice. I'm going to keep cranking away on this thing, so when I come back I'll have this glued in and I will have this set. All right, so I'm sorry you missed out on the big reveal of me pulling the wood off the door, but I'll show you where things are at now. So I am getting ready to hit this with some 220 grit sand, and that's just to kind of clean up some of these rough edges. But I did end up drilling another hole here, and this is going to get covered. So, but I did drill a hole here so that I could put a screw in on this side and help clamp this side together. I've got it in. Looks like I need to come down a little bit on the deadbolt. You can see all my marker lines where I basically just referenced all the lines on the inside of this and just wrapped them around, but sometimes the marker lies. That's really nice. Now I just need to drill my holes here. I'm just using cutting oil. This is Harbor Freight stuff. Works really well. It's like a foam. You spray it and it just like sticks right on there, so it's good. I started with a what looks like maybe a 3/16, and then I just jumped all the way up to this 3/8. To cut the squares out, I went ahead and bought these. These are just, you know, they're metal blades. They're fine. So I drilled my large hole, and then I just kind of chipped away. And then I used files. You definitely want a good set of files. I thought I had a triangular file, but I cannot find it. And that would have worked really well in this situation. But so you want some files. And yes, you can file this down. It is a little bit of work. But that's where I'm at on this. I'm going to get everything aligned, and then I'm going to drill out these holes. You can see this is going to be, look at that. That is like, that I mean, that is going to be beautiful with the striker plate. I've got the guide pins in. They line up with the striker plate. So I just left this piece in here because the latch was hitting that and closing anyways into the latch. So now the guide pins fall in here. I had to shave these out, and I used, these are metal screws, so they're fine thread. Pre-drilled the holes and then used these to just tap them in. I had to come in and put a piece of tube here as well. So I tacked that in, top and bottom. Can't really show you down here. And then I got my guide pins set, and everything is nice and smooth. I did also have to shave the front of this off because it would not fit. I didn't want to cut the door away because then I could make this weak here. So I left that and I shaved the front of this off about 1/8 of an inch. And I just did that with my angle grinder here, a sander disc on it. And I just put it on the table and clamped it. But really, that's really it. Okay, so now I need to address the air cylinder and the claw door lock. Now, the reason why I say I need to address it is because when this door closes, that claw will automatically come in and lock. And it does that because this trigger here, this little paddle is hitting the trigger and it's closing the ground loop. That is also controlled by a switch right here on the door. When you press that switch, that pushes the door cylinder out and pushes the paddle away to deactivate the claw down here. Now, the problem with that is that if the claw is engaged and I open the door, there's not enough give in the door to move that switch. So my workaround that is to tap into the power supply to this switch. There's 2 ground sides and then a power side, and basically one disconnects power when you turn the ignition off, which that's going to stay working just like it should. The other works off the trigger. And then there's another switch down here on the outside of the door that also ties into that. Now you might be thinking, oh, why don't I just leave the air cylinder hooked up? And that way you can just hold the trigger and it'll push the door in and out. Well, the problem is still there. The door has to budge just enough to release that switch. And with the door being such a tight fit, there's no movement there. The switch does not have a ground. It's just when you turn the switch on, that closes the power from the ground over here and connects the ground here. So it basically just tricks this switch into thinking that it's coming off and on. That's going to make the claw operate like it should. So it'll lock whenever they're driving. And then when they get somewhere in park, they'll hit that switch and that'll unlock everything, and then they'll be able to open their door. Now, how I dealt with the little paddle here hitting that is I just bent this back out of the way. So now it doesn't hit at all. Typically that paddle would hit and it would make the door lock. And then I would flip the switch and the door would stay locked, but the switch wouldn't have any power. So then you could let this out and there wouldn't be any power to the switch, but the claw would still stay latched on. So just to eliminate trying to get into all the crazy stuff there and making it a much larger project, I just created the loop. So I have a loop from my power here. So I use those Wago connectors, and it connects right here to this red line. That's the center, not this red connector here, but there's a center switch in there. And I just created a loop that goes up to my switch. And that basically, when the switch is up, that will let the door lock operate as it should. So that basically breaks the loop between the center pin and this pin here. And then when it's turned off, that will connect the center loop to this pin here, making it think that this is working, and it disengages the lock. So it can be like that the entire time they're getting ready, and then when it's time to skedaddle, they release their brake, turn the lock switch off or on, and that will re-engage the claw here. So another thing that I did in the dash here was I disconnected the trigger switch to the air cylinder in the door. That way there was no chance of them accidentally hitting it and potentially pushing against the arm in the door and creating any kind of binding. So I really hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was very insightful, and I wish you the best of luck if you decide to take this challenge on all on your own. Well, that's all for now. I'm glad you stuck around this long. We'll see you next time.